Hello, David Zaretsky for the Bond Experience. Welcome back. Okay, you could tell by the thumbnail, this is going to be a very special one. And I think it's going to play on the heartstrings of a lot of you out there, certainly from a nostalgic standpoint, but just because, Goldeneye, is it not the universally loved James Bond movie? And you've got Casino Royale, and then you've got Goldeneye, and it's like, hey, let's all come together because who doesn't love Goldeneye? But there's a couple of angles that we're going to take today that I think may surprise you, but also spark the little synapse in your GoldenEye memory, moments, and experience and make you question the film a little bit differently. But listen, I just can't sit and talk to myself. You know how we do these things. I had to invite somebody very special. Who could I have out there that I could wax poetic with, that I was comfortable enough that I could have philosophical, deep questions with, and also who loves Goldeneye? That person wasn't available, but thankfully, a close second. No, of course, it's only one and only Calvin Dyson. Calvin, welcome back.
Hi, David. Thank you for inviting me back. You had me with that intro then. I was like, oh, he's being so kind. He's being so flattering. And then
You know
you
what?
got
I
me.
had just right up until then, and then yank it away. It's terrible.
Yeah, no,
How
exactly.
have
You
you
keep me
been, my
humble.
friend?
It's good.
How have you been?
I've been okay. A little bit. There's some, wintry viruses going around at the moment. So it's, but I've got my trusty Coke Zero here to blow away the cobwebs. So
It's not like Hercules or anything like that, or some weird virus that you've been scratched and you can't see your kid anymore. Nothing
now
like
that you
that.
mention it, yeah, no, my family have been keeping a keeping a wide berth for a couple of months now. So I don't know.
Wow. Well, we're gonna pump you for knowledge. So this is going to be
Excellent.
good. So when I reached out to you and said it's my turn to do one of these, why don't we do Goldeneye? Excitement, apprehension. What goes through your mind?
Oh, all the positive, like excitement, just joy. This is pure. I'm on such a Brosnan hype train at the moment as well that this, like, for me, was a very exciting just opportunity to revisit this film, which is one of, if not my favorite all-time Bond film. I'm sure we're going to get into this as we, talk through. But it's really just, a delight to be here talking to you about it.
And if I'm not mistaken, behind your right shoulder, we've got a GoldenEye device sitting there.
That is a GoldenEye device, yeah, one of the factory entertainment prop replicas. So
That had to be a lot of love because I know that's a major investment.
oh yeah, like that was one. I've got that and the Golden Gun as well, which are just a couple of the Bond props that I'm just like, oh yeah, you know what? I want to have that on my shelf, be able to look at that, be able to touch it, caress it, undress it whenever I want to.
You
And
could
yeah,
touch
that's
it.
one
You
of
could touch it if you want.
the.
By the way, themes with gold. That seems to be the jelly in your jam roll.
Yeah,
Golden
I know.
eye, man with the golden gun.
Yeah, it's a bit odd, isn't it? I do have a prop replica of the Moonraker laser on pre-order because
I've
that
heard
is
that.
another device that I really want, and I did make the connection that, you know what, these are all like weapons and objects that you can get in Bond games on multiplayer modes. Like in Nightfire, they have the GoldenEye mode, and then you have the Golden Gun
Ooh.
mode, and all these kinds of things. And I do wonder if that was some kind of subconscious reasoning for these particular devices.
You could not have created a better segue because one of the things I didn't want to just open up and go, "Hey, what do you think about the pre-title?" And
Mm.
we'll get to that. But I really thought about Golden. I had a couple conversations lately because I think you've sparked something in the Bond community where people, especially now that they've put Craig to bed, they put a mint on his pillow and said, "Good night," outed his bum, sent him on his way. They're looking backwards. And a part of that is looking at how strong, and I've always believed this, you and I are on the same court with this, how strong Brosnan's showings were in this film, and maybe never so strong as Goldeneye. But as I have these conversations, I've noticed something. The entry into Goldeneye is very different depending on, see these gray whiskers, depending sometimes on generation and experience. And I'm going to show you something. This may seem very familiar to you, but I'd love to start it off because I'm going to show you after this slide my entry into Goldeneye. But was this your entry into it?
Well, it was the N64 game, because I think this is something else that someone's mocked up, because this says Super Nintendo on it, which I
You're
d-
such an expert.
unless you're about to like blow my mind and say that there was a Bond game that I didn't know existed, which you might well do. But the game was totally an entry point for me to Bond in a broader sense. I still to this day can't remember whether I first knew of Bond just as a character from the game or from just awareness of movies, but certainly
Right.
the connection to the movie and the game, like that did unlock a new level of Bond fandom for me, because I definitely remember playing the game before seeing the film.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah,
That's what I
yeah.
wanted to know. Is it the game that spurred on and then somebody nudged you and said, Calvin, I don't know if you know this, but there's a movie related to this. And then you saw the movie.
That was exactly it. And my grandma had the VHS of Goldeneye at that time. So that was kind of like, oh, wow, seeing that on the shelf. And then she let me borrow it. And I was still under, because it's a 12 rating here. I think I must have been about 9 or 10 years old. I was just a little bit too young to legally watch it, but they let me watch it anyway. And some of the scenes in the film, like, that scene with Xenia and the Admiral, woo, that blew my, 10-year-old
What's
brain.
going on here? She's really likes him. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, and by the way, the reason I'm starting with this little nugget is I wanted to show you my entry point. So you had the game and then the movie, and that's going to come into play as we talk about these things, because I have a premise that I haven't even fully introduced yet, but this was mine. And the whole idea, of course, is that there was this gaping maw of a time between Timothy Dalton and Pierce Brosnan, especially the introduction. And all the way to the right there, you can see, that's the trailer where he comes out and he shoots the 007. It goes swinging around. He goes, you were expecting somebody else. To me, it was going to the movie theater and seeing, oh my gosh, they're coming out with James Bond. Like James Bond is alive, because in the States, you probably know this, Dalton at the time wasn't really embraced. And then even if you go farther back, A View to a Kill had middling at best reviews and acceptance from the people in the United States. Plus, from a cultural standpoint, Bond wasn't our Christmas Day surprise. It just wasn't. We had all of the quote unquote American heroes. So when I saw this in the movie theater, I got very excited, especially that middle poster that has so much action. And I'm like, ooh, I've always liked Pierce Brosnan and Remington Steele. That's how the Yanks knew him. But this was my entry point was Bond is gone. Goodnight, Bond, Timothy Dalton. Wow, he's back. And my excitement. Yours is game entry. Wow, there's a movie or franchise associated with this. And I want that to have in our back of your mind. Do you think there's going to be a difference in how we enjoy this movie?
Oh, quite possibly from that perspective. I was really interested to hear like how you came to Goldeneye, because we've talked in another one of these videos about how Tomorrow Never Dies was a real special movie for you, and we talked in that video about how that was the movie that kind of took your fandom to the next level in a lot of ways. So I'm curious to hear like how Goldeneye fits in for you in that respect. If it was the movie that came slightly after this that really kind of catapulted you into the Bond, fandom, as it were.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're going to get that and all more. Let's start at the beginning. And again, I'm going to get your point of view. The pre-title sequence, even before you see Brosnan's face, you have this incredible opening. Thoughts?
Oh, it is a pure take your breath away moment. It's I would have loved to have seen this in the cinema when it was first released, and just hearing I'm sure you could have heard a pin drop in the cinema. It's just such a breathtaking moment. All the sound disappears. It's fantastic, and you have done this jump, which I can't believe.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. It's almost like you saw the slide deck before I did it.
I've seen that video. Believe me, I have.
I did do it, and I'll tell you what, it is one of the strangest videos I've ever done, and it has to do with the enjoyment of the film. When I first saw this pre-title sequence that you see here, I just remember this was Bond, man on a mission. I mean, literally, he's wearing commando gear. He's by himself. To me, at the core of who Bond is when he's at his best, it is a man against the world. Yes, he's got supportive help and things like that, but we all feel like that at times. It's just us in this world. To me, this represents the stealthy, steely man against the world Bond. So when I did this jump, it kind of freaked out Danielle, not because it was just, 750 feet down to rocky crags below, but she was like, "You're not afraid at all. Like, what is going on in your head?" And all I could think about is, I am replicating Pierce Brosnan's very first entry into the world of Bond. And because that's all I had in my mind, like literally standing at the precipice of this, jumping off, getting tangled in the rope, wondering how the hell I'm going to get up. All I could think about was Pierce Brosnan and James Bond. That's a fanatic. But that's how impressive this movie was. Can you blame me?
Oh, absolutely not. And I think he is the phrase that comes to mind all the time is you hear it in some of the behind the scenes material on the DVD and in books and stuff, that a key bit of direction that Martin Campbell would give to Pierce Brosnan throughout the whole film would be just sharp as a knife, sharp as a knife, sharp as a knife. And you can kind of see that in his performance. There is a maturity to it, even though it is just his first one. There's just a coolness, a suaveness. He's really on the ball, on the money throughout the whole thing, I think.
Absolutely. And now, all right, so we're going to get into the filter to which we see these movies, because as I think about this opening, I mean, God dang, look how good he looks good. That guy's way too handsome. I just got to say that. But here he is, almost in game player mode. So talk me and take us all back. When young Calvin sees this for the first time, you have to have the video game in mind, and you see a scene like this. Are you able to then say, like, oh, it's just like the game, or you're just like, let me immerse myself in the movie?
Oh, a bit of both, I think. Like this shot in particular, this sequence is the people who made the game actually got to go and visit the sets of the movie, and they replicate aspects of it, like to the, like this bit with the stairs where he comes out of the bathroom, like this whole bit is exactly replicated in the game. So you come out of that door and you can do this exact thing and, come around and whatnot. So recognizing that, first of all, you're like, oh my God, this is so cool. This is just like the game. But then just from an immersion perspective, it immediately puts you in his place. Like, that kind of, a huge part of Bond has always been the wish fulfillment aspect of it. Like, oh, wouldn't it just be so cool to be that guy? And I think the game kind of helped me in a way, like back when I was a kid in particular, just sort of really get into his mind and be kind of like, oh, this is exactly what I would, I feel like I am him in this moment.
Absolutely. I tell you, I still watch this scene today, and it's so exciting to me because you do feel like you're along for the ride. And I think this film, possibly more than any other James Bond film, and that's a pretty bold statement, we'll see if it holds true, takes the viewer, buckles them in, and says, we're not going to let you go. Like, there's not going to be a point where you're kind of looking around the room or at your watch, or, the suspension of disbelief, I think, is so high. But here we go. So now we've got the partnership going. And again, there is no bad shot in this film, thanks to Martin Campbell. But now you've got kind of an equal with Bond almost for the first time. What did you think about the interplay between the two?
Loved it. It's one of those things that you'd just never seen in the series to that point. And even now, it's still, I guess Know Me and No Time to Die is... and that's the most recent Bond film. That's been him kind of, teaming up with another 00 agent. Right. Here, I'm curious to know how you felt about this, actually, because this must have been we'd seen other 00 agents, 009 and Octopussy springs to mind, but not unlike a real, like, team mission effort with Bond. How did you feel about that, seeing it for the first time? Do you remember?
I remember seeing it for the first time and thinking to myself, because I had no idea about the plot of the movie or what was going to happen. The game wasn't out, obviously, when the movie first premiered. So I'm watching it with fresh eyes. And I also wasn't into Bond at the level that I would have read any notes or magazines ahead of time. It was just like, boom. Yeah. I just remember to myself, like, ooh, what is this? Like, they're introducing another 00. Like, are we going to have a whole group of commandos in 00? So the excitement was there. What I loved best about it, that the writers did and the director, was the banter between the two. Here they are, guns a-blazing, insurmountable odds, and they're still saying, close the door, there's a draft, last call, buy me a pint, just in the face of death and adversity, and don't we all want to be like this in the worst situation with our jobs? Don't we just want to say absolutely the right thing? So to me, this is how I got into Brosnan. Brosnan wasn't just, oh, it's a good movie and he looks the part. He had that swarmy, pithy snarkiness that I've come to know Bond as. It's like not since Connery. I mean, Roger Moore had the one-liners and the campiness, but not since Connery did you have these one-liners where you're like, yes, oh, I wish I could have said that. So I was there.
Oh, amazing. And it is nice because they are both 00 agents and they're both cracking wise and making the puns. It's just a nice, but it's updated. Like, I don't think it's, as cheesy as maybe some of the previous, one-liners might have been in the Roger Moore era, as much as I love them. Here, there is an edge to it still. And you just buy these two immediately as agents. They both look great.
100%. And, up until obviously the PTS is one that everybody recounts as like nearly perfect. I have to always ask you about your reaction to the song, Tina Turner's Goldeneye. What do you think?
I like it very much. I don't think it's ever been
it was so middling. I
liked it. I don't think it's ever been a top 5. I don't think it's ever been a top 10. But that's a very crowded category when it comes to Bond songs because there are so many great ones. But I like it. I like it a lot. It's about as diplomatic as I could be. How about you?
This is so funny because I almost have the same exact reaction. I was thinking about it as I was building this presentation, and I thought to myself, David, you never purposely put on Goldeneye when you're listening to Bond music. Like I have a playlist and it's like, number 552 might be Goldeneye and I like it. I don't love it. It doesn't connect me back for some weird reason. It doesn't connect me back nostalgically to the movie, like the tank chase scene music does or something like that I would absolutely put in my playlist way before Tina Turner's singing. So it was kind of like a head scratcher for me. Like, why don't I like this more?
I have exactly the same reaction. That's so funny that we have the same feeling about it because it is one of those things where I like it a lot. Don't get me wrong. I am very positive about it, but it's not at that iconic level or just I don't play it all that much, I guess is what what I'm saying. And I don't know why.
Is the song, this is my stupidity. All right, so I'm going to lay a bomb on you 15 minutes into this video.
Great.
I've played the video game once.
And Good Lord.
It was at somebody else's house. I don't even own it. I remember playing Tomorrow Never Dies a lot. But I did not play, for some reason, I did not play GoldenEye and I didn't own it.
You must be the only person on Earth who has ever said the sentence. I played GoldenEye once and I played Tomorrow Never Dies an awful lot.
I know. I'm looking forward to the re-release because I'm going to be right there with all of you. But I have to ask, is the GoldenEye song even in the game?
No.
Interesting.
Yeah, the score for the game is really great. I love a lot of the level music. I've
heard the pause music a lot.
Graham Norgate. I think it's Graham Norgate who did the score for that, and it certainly takes some influence from the Eric Serra score, but it mainly does its own thing. And that song is not in there, but they did include it in the reimagining of the game, the one that was out for the Nintendo Wii and PlayStation 3. And Nicole Scherzinger did a cover of the song for their opening title sequence, which was pretty good actually. It's quite good.
All right, there'll be more. So there'll be more game questions for you. You're my gaming host. If you excuse
Excellent.
All right, so pre-title sequence. You've got the titles, you've got the song, and then suddenly we're introduced to a very familiar-looking vehicle, and right away they want to bring us back. And of course, it's Pierce Brosnan driving the DB5 with the analyst.
Oh my God!
So I mean. I'll start first on this one because this was one of the first times outside of a commando outfit you see Brosnan. He's wearing the great shirt, the sweater, a little hard to see here, but he's got the ascot on. He just looks calm and cool, handsome as can be. Men want to be him, women want him. It's like this is the Fleming Bond, but it's also the Brosnan fun aspect mixed with the Connery, wrapped in the traditional vehicle. to me, this could not have been more of a perfect opening. But what did you think about it?
Yep, agreed. It's, I mean, I can't imagine the novelty of what it must have been like seeing this car again on the big
Oh,
screen after what, like 30 years since Thunderball, more than 30 years. Like that must have just been such a treat for fans at the time. And just this whole little car chase is so much fun. Bringing in Xenia, it's an action scene, but it's not quite an action scene, but it's still got a nice bit of adrenaline to it. It's funny. He's got some nice lines. Caroline here in the car's just hilarious. I
yeah.
really like her, and he looks the part. He's just great. That's one of the NPL items that I have of the
Oh,
Goldeneye sweatshirt. I love that thing so much. The cashmere jumper. It's
that's
fantastic.
perfect. But listen, Bond, Fleming loved this too. Fleming loved and rejoiced in the imperfections of women and men. He celebrated imperfections, broken nose, things like that. And this film has some imperfections, but maybe not to you. But for me,
Oh,
I mean, Eric's soundtrack. Um, no, Calvin, just no. What
you,
did you think of it?
this is one of those things that I've sort of come around on over the years. It's like it never bothered me when I saw this film as a kid, as a teen. Never really, annoyed me or anything. And then kind of came around to becoming involved on Bond forums and stuff, and reading articles and more. And then people started pointing out stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, I do kind of. That is quite annoying and weird and random and just plain incorrectly scored in places. It just doesn't match the mood of the dialogue or the performances. But now I'm sort of coming back around to the side of like, actually, you know what? I can't imagine this film without that score anymore, and I kind of don't want to change it for anything in the world.
Yeah.
But I think this is one of the more egregious moments of the score when Xenia comes in, and it is that. And
Oh, that's better than mine. That was good.
and I
We
just
should do
don't
like a
know if
rap
it,
together.
exactly. And later on in the next scene when they're playing Baccarat at the casino,
Mm,
the music there is kind of this like it's almost like a love theme. It's
yeah.
really it lulls you into thinking that they're
And then
flirting
it
when
stops
actually
at one point. Like
yeah.
someone like pressed pause and they went, "Oh shit, sorry,
Yeah.
I stopped the music."
No, exactly. But the whole point of that scene is that when you listen to the dialogue, the kind of performances, they're kind of sparring. They're not flirting. He's kind of
Mm,
prodding, trying to get a bit of information out of her. He knows
mm.
that, and she's getting angry with him, and the music doesn't quite match that intention, I don't think.
You're right. That's a really good observation. I will say this. I am not a canceller of things and choices from Bond movies. Like, I don't need the slide whistle to go away. I don't need the Beach
Oof.
Boys music to go away.
Yeah, that is controversial.
Well, but it's a part of who we are now. Like
Mm,
that is what we own as Bond fans, and we can't take that away. And I'm not the whole like Greedo shot first guy.
yeah,
So I love that everybody knows what that is.
it's a good
But
reference. Yeah.
for me, I don't want to change the music. I remember seeing it on the screen, and I actually remember sitting butt in seat in the theater with a friend and going like, this is like very techno, even for the 90s.
Mm,
This is like wow techno. But then when you listen to like later David Arnold, like techno was really embraced in a lot of
mm,
different ways. So I'm okay with it.
yeah.
I got to go into the beginning outside of Bond and Alec. I've got to go into the pure genius, but I want your point of view on the introduction of every single character in this film. And of course, you mentioned this already, Xenia on the top. Even this flirtiness, it says so much about her. She doesn't say a word, and yet you know exactly the type of person this is. It's very much like Bond, fly by the seat of her pants. But what did you think of her introduction?
Brilliant. In fact, you said something there that never really occurred to me before, but yeah, every major player in this film has such a wonderful introductory
Mhm.
shot. Like I'm even thinking of Orumov in the opening titles, the pre-title sequence, where he walks into the frame behind the glass, and the music just kind of
Yes.
swells. Like here with Xenia, where she's like, I think she's taking the glasses off, isn't she? And then
Yeah.
with the wind blowing and all that, really fantastic. Even Alec, like coming out of the shadows at the start, really nice. But she's one of my very favorite Bond characters of all time. I absolutely love Famke Janssen and what she does in this film. How do you feel about her?
Oh, I love her. I think she's fantastic. She's actually probably, it's interesting too, because I consider her a Bond girl, but
Mm,
clearly she's a henchman. And
mm,
I think she's actually, if you take a look at her success ratio up until the very end, she's one of the more successful henchmen in the entire series. You know,
mm.
she's not she does exactly what she needs to do. She's dangerous. She's seductive. She uses her seduction skills as a weapon, just like Bond, and yet she's batshit crazy. So she's got that going on. I love that they embraced all this. I don't know. Well, you all right? Let's get controversial. Why not? Do you think they would do a Xenia on a top in today's culture?
That is a really good question. Because it is still quite uncommon in the Bond films these days to have female villains. In the Brosnan era, I felt like they embraced it a bit more. I'm thinking of like her, Miranda Frost, Electra King, obviously. I think it would depend on the tone. And I think maybe they didn't do it so much in the Craig era because it was a bit more of a serious kind
Yeah.
of tone. Whereas in Brosnan, it is a bit more fantastical, a little bit
Yes.
more spy-fi. So maybe that just fit in and was more palatable. I don't know, because obviously of the character's relationship with women in general, going all the way back to Fleming and the books, I can understand that the filmmakers are a little bit, they don't quite
Yeah.
want to show Bond killing women, and that is what he needs to do if they are villains.
Because
Um,
maybe that's what the movie would all be about. Like the press around the
yeah.
movie is, oh, that's the one where he kills a woman. But I think that I'll play the other side in that, let's take a look at this scene. She
Mm,
goes head to head with him in almost every single scene and successfully to the point where I think she's one of the more powerful women, never mind henchman, villain, or dispatched by Bond. I just
mm.
think she's a powerful woman figure
Yeah.
in the Bond thing. She doesn't take anything lightly.
I completely agree with you. I think it's, and to your point as well, actually, about her being a successful henchman. Like that's so true. Like she's really good at her job for
Yeah.
so much of this thing. She's so efficient, and even though she's completely nuts, she still carries out what she's supposed to do. She succeeds. I mean, she steals the helicopter. She kills everyone at Severnaya. She's like, yeah, oh yeah, Alec
Yeah.
would be really lost in his
Ki-
evil scheme without her.
Kills an admiral, gets the keys. And then later on, she's extremely successful in like knocking out Natalia. I mean, just
Yeah,
all these
yeah.
things. I mean, she deserves making it to the very last 15 minutes of the film, quite frankly.
Totally, totally. And she has fun doing it. Like what more could you want?
Oh no, no, this is exactly what I want. This film, I have to say, because as I look at your gadgets surrounding you, and I'm a gadget guy who doesn't love that.
Yeah.
This film gets a little vitriol from people. I've actually heard this of being like, oh, there's no gadgets. I would actually fence with that because I love these little moments where Brosnan is dressed to the nines, and yet he's got this little spy gadget that has a fax machine that's wireless and just I don't know. What did you think about kind of the little more tropey gadget moments of the film?
Would this just feature one of my all-time favorite Bond gadgets in the laser watch? So it,
Yes.
it, it gets full marks from me in that respect. Yeah, but even like little things like this, like when he goes to the Aston Martin and he's communicating with Moneypenny and everything, I don't think we'd ever seen that before in the series. I think
Yeah.
it's real. I think it does a really good job with the gadgets. I think it has some flashier ones and then some less flashy ones, like that one you
And
just had on screen.
it's got the pen, for goodness sakes.
Oh, I love the pen, the exploding
Uh,
pen.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we can't forget the pen. Now, there is a moment in here, and I want to talk about interactions and interplay because you're going to have to be the game expert here.
Mm,
I know there's a lot of action in the game,
mm,
but I'm curious to see, for example, you have these style moments, which I love this part right here. And the reason I picked this picture, everybody's like, what the hell are you picking that picture? This is when he goes on, obviously, to the Admiral's ship. He gets into a little fight using the towel. He swings open the door with so much style and aplomb. And then he just kind of like wipes his face with the very weapon that he just used to dispatch one of the guys. Does it have that type of like cool suave factor in there, or is it just like stealth, fight, shoot?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think because of the technical limitations of the time, it is a bit more stealth shoot, action. Like you don't use a towel at any point, sadly.
Damn it.
Yeah, I know. I just don't think the technology was quite there. Like, you don't really have proper cut scenes, even though the characters do have dialogue. And they changed a lot as well. They added in levels, they kind of fill in gaps in the timeline a bit in between the pre-title sequence and the rest of the film. But I'm totally with you. I love this moment. And I think the fact that he uses the towel to, like, fight the guy, but then also, like, dabs his head with it afterwards, it's a brilliant moment.
Okay, so I've got my first philosophical evolution question of Calvin Dyson. You didn't know this was going to be a Barbara Walters moment. So when you take a look at this and you're watching Bond as young Calvin, and you see these moments that clearly are not in the game, but they're showing a very sophisticated, very capable spy and almost like a gentleman spy. What impression, if any, can you remember it making on you as an individual?
You know what, that's a really interesting point that I'd never considered, because as much as I do love the GoldenEye game, you maybe don't get a good idea of who Bond is as a character from that, because of the limitations. They don't have cutscenes, dialogue is all text, interactions are few and far between. So I think, if anything, the game was kind of like a nice introduction to elements like, gadgets and weapons and the action and the fast pacedness of it, the adrenaline rush. And then you come to the film and then you get a much better appreciation of who that character is. And I think one of the great things about GoldenEye is that it was re-establishing Bond after 6 years of no Bond film. So they do try to hit a lot of different beats in that initial, like, 20, 30 minutes or something, up until the Tiger helicopter is stolen. If this were in the Roger Moore era, the Tiger helicopter being stolen would be like a 10-minute segment without Bond. Like, it would be like the sinking of the ship in For Your Eyes Only, the stealing of the Moonraker shuttle or whatever. But by putting Bond in that scenario, you just get moments like that really do well to establish who this guy is. I feel like, from a cool perspective, style, badassness, womanizer, it hits a lot of necessary beats in a short space of time, which is a really great introduction to the character, I think.
So could you say with accuracy that Calvin Dyson watching GoldenEye today versus Calvin I. Oh, that's the title of this thumbnail. Calvin I, dissecting Calvin Dyson. Would you say that nowadays, when you watch it, those scenes have more meaning or more significance because you're more into style and fashion and sartorial aspects?
Totally, yeah. And the character as well, like, having read all the Fleming books now, for instance, and sort of seeing how this relates to that, it's it's elements that you don't really get in the game as such. Like, I think they complement each other, but they're not the same thing. You can't just play the game and have the full GoldenEye experience.
Exactly. All right, so we have an introduction of not one, but two characters. Yes, folks, it's bonus time. You've got Boris and Natalya. Talk to me about these characters. And by the way, their interplay and introduction.
Oh, again, just love them. Natalya has always rated very highly for me. I think, maybe just below Vesper and Tracy, but the fact that she is in that category for me of, like, they being the great loves of Bond's life, Vesper and Tracy, and Natalya in there with them. I love Isabella Scorupco as an actress. I know that the actress herself, like, she took a step back from Hollywood, and she wanted to live her life, be a mother, and all those things. So good for her, fair play, because she got a lot of offers in Hollywood. She was going to be in the next Zorro film. She was LA Confidential, the Kim Basinger role could have been hers. But I think here she's just wonderful, and I love that the film spends so much time with her. Like, it's kind of unusual in that way. We don't normally spend, maybe Melina in For Your Eyes Only, we don't normally spend so much time with the Bond girl before she actually meets Bond. And Alan Cumming, I just love. Boris is hilarious. I love the whole interplay. Quite why they're speaking English when they're in Russia, who knows? But
So we can understand them, Calvin. I don't know if you
that
know how this works.
that's true, yes, because reading is boring, and I don't want to be reading
Don't
subtitles for
make
20
me
minutes.
read. No.
How
Well,
do you feel about them?
yeah, absolute adoration.
Oh,
And I'll
cool.
tell you, I love them as characters individually, but I love this part in particular because this film does something that some films, I'll just mention it, like Spectre, don't do incredibly well, which is create a lot of not just affability, but emotional connection to the Bond girl. And I think
Yeah.
with Natalia, it really sets her up as a worker, someone who's passionate, somebody who has a little bit of fun with life, can deal with difficult coworkers, quite frankly. But you feel like she's a real person. She's not this. I'm sorry to say, she's not this bikini walking out of the water, even though you see her in a bikini later walking out of the water. Um, but Boris himself, too, I think you can have fun, but make somebody very diabolical at the same time. That is really challenging as writers, producers, and directors to do that. And Alan Cummings' portrayal is spot on. But then they go the added distance of giving you, they say, oh, hey, that's a lot of layers. But now we're going to really give these people personality. And the little piece of red tape on Boris's glasses means that his screw came out and the glasses fell apart. And I think it's such a human moment to say, this guy's a bit of a geek. He's repairing his glasses. He doesn't give anything. Um, it adds to the dimensionality of these characters that are just, they're missing in some of the other Bond films.
I completely agree. It's so economical. Even how their like workstations are decorated, because Boris has a load of stickers and figures, I think, around him. You just know who he is from that alone. And Natalia being there, what she's wearing, she's kind of laying back. She's got a bit of kind of like, call center worker kind of vibes. It's, she doesn't love the job necessarily, but it's really economical character establishing stuff. It's lovely.
The characters in this film, I think this is one of the reasons. I mean, everybody says, oh, it's the action, it's Brosnan, it's all this. Yes. But with weak characters comes a weak movie. And you have everybody coming across very strongly and in a multidimensional way. So you've already referred to this gentleman right here. What I love about him is you see the following emotions in this movie. You see delight, panic, desperation. He even has a drink at one point. Glee, he gives up at one point, so there's that as well. Confusion. I mean, there's just so much that goes through, and this is an ancillary character. I mean, but what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I love him so much, and I think all of the characters, like we already touched on how they're introduced, but how they play out, it's just, as you say, they hit so many different beats, and him in particular, because he is kind of like a tertiary villain, I guess. Like, I think in
Yeah,
terms of Alex Plan, he is kind of below Xenia and Boris, I would say. And
yeah.
yet he has so much to do. I love it when he pops up drunk later on, and it's clear that he's heard of like Bond and Natalia being apprehended by the authorities, and he's like, oh my god, this is terrible for me, and he's been drinking on the way. It's just really nice little character details, and I think the actors superb because he's evil, but he also has some funny moments. I love it when he looks over at Xenia really confused and a bit concerned when she's just killed everyone in the
Oh, that was great. It's
facility.
almost like, what have I gotten myself into, or what is she all about?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you get the sense that he's in this for money, he's in it for some kind of base financial gain, and he might, he's maybe not in it quite so deep as Alec is, but yeah, he's a good character.
Yeah, and I tell you this again, the strength of this is the interplay of characters that you probably wouldn't get in the video game of like tete-a-tetes. For example,
Mm.
I mean, this scene when you've got Bond and you've got M, and it's Judi Dench, and talk about lighting a powder keg of a strong, strong character. What did you think of the interplay of these two?
Love it. Again, this is going to sound like a broken record at this point, but I
Fine.
think particularly that character, like I could wax lyrical about Judi Dench all day, but that character and her portrayal of it for me had such a special resonance, I think, because from when I became a Bond fan in the 90s, she was them then, she was the incumbent, and she was kind of the longest serving element for me, sort of transitioning through my childhood into adulthood, seeing Skyfall and all that kind of stuff. So her character for me has such a special place, and I think that might be why Skyfall has a real special place in my heart as well, because it's so much about her. And the fact that it starts here, I think it's a great. It really sets the tone for their relationship. I just wish the film did more with it, because she is just in those couple of scenes early
I
on.
know. I know,
Yeah.
and I've got to tell you, this is terrible. You have so much richness in what you take away with this. The main thing I remember when I watched this for the first time, and even what I take away now, is that, ooh, they're drinking at work. Like, this was my main takeaway. I'm like, that is the most baddest, cool ass thing I've ever seen, where a boss and an employee, essentially, well-dressed employee, no doubt, but they are just talking about things and they're having drinks, because that never happened to me until I started that at my work. But I mean, what did you think of that?
That kind of reminded me of my headmaster at my old junior school, who would have a bottle of, it's a very cheap whiskey in his desk drawer. But he was an old school kind of guy. He retired when we were there, and I don't think that his predecessor took up that same habit. But I think that is like an old school British thing, maybe, to always have like a, some kind of strong liquor in the office. I don't
British are
know.
the best. They're
Yeah.
the best. Love how they do work. And speaking of how they do work, we got to talk about one of the hardest working individuals, someone that you and I would lay our lives down for easily. Desmond Llewellyn, the Q scene. What? How does this? And first of all, again, I don't mean to peel away the onion of Calvin Dyson, but when you're watching this for the very first time, you're coming off the game. You really don't have a relationship, I guess, with the first time you see this with Q.
No, not at all. In the game, it is just, slides on the mission briefing. So you have Q's little briefing where he tells you the gadgets that you've got. But the voice of the character isn't quite right. It's hard to imagine Desmond Llewellyn, picture Desmond Llewellyn saying some of the stuff that the game has written down for him. But this is my favorite Q scene in the whole series. This scene, it has an energy to it. I think Desmond is brilliant. They're really leaning into crackpot inventor type rather than pissed off civil servant type, which I think he really excels at in these later films. I think he does the same in the Dalton ones as well. I think they very much transitioned what he was doing with the character in those films. And here with the sandwich, one of my favorite Q gags. I love the telephone box, the airbag in it. There's just so much going on, and I think it has a real adrenaline to it that I just adore.
I agree. I would say it's in my top 4 Q scenes, but only because I come with such a strong relationship of Q. So I sort of weigh it in with all the other Q scenes. But I will say this for this one. Again, in a confounded way, I scratch my head how well they blended campy, fun, laughter moments with kind of a serious Bond and a serious Q, where the moments around them are funny, but they're not having to do one-liners or anything like that. It's magical.
Yeah, I think broadly, I think the tone in this film is really spot on, with some of that, old school Bond fun, but it still keeps it serious and grounded in places. Elements are grounded, but I think overall it just works incredibly well. And I think this scene encapsulates that really nicely.
I'm doing something and I'm realizing something for the very first time, and preparing for this and building slides and things like that. I'm like, oh, this person and this person. Now that I'm talking about it with you, I am absolutely shocked at how many characters this film introduces at different intervals, and yet does it successfully, because now we've got a new character.
Yeah.
We've got Wade. What do you think of our friend here?
Because he is effectively a replacement Felix. I guess they just felt like they weren't going to bring him back with, unlike in the books where he comes back with a hook hand and a peg leg after his incident with the shark. So it's interesting. It's an interesting choice, I think, to just create this new character. But I like it in the sense that if this had been Felix, it would have just, oh, hey, how's it going? Off we go sort of thing. The fact that their relationship has a bit of spice to it, that, Wade is so kind of over the whole spy thing, he won't even do the codes when they first meet. The Muffy tattoo is brilliant. Yeah, I think he does, because he's a functional character. He gets Bond from A to B and gives him a bit of information.
Yeah.
But they still make a character out of him, and he's funny and charming and interesting, and they bring him back in the next one. So I guess they must have liked him too.
Yeah, I I'm mixed about this character. I really,
Mm.
again, I wouldn't have the movie without him. So it's not about I wish that this wouldn't, but he is kind of like the Sheriff Pepper of this film in the sense that he's the goofy American with a lot of humor.
Mm.
Now he is kind of like a driving Miss Daisy in the sense that he gets vehicles to them. He's a transport. He does sort of the same thing in Tomorrow Never Dies. He gets in the big plane. He's kind of the vehicles master, you
Yeah,
know,
that's
whether
true,
it's
actually.
delivering a BMW or taking him to Zukovsky. He's a go-to guy, like,
Mm.
which I love that. But they really amped up the humor factor, which I think is needed in a potential serious Cold War movie like this.
Mm.
So I wouldn't change it, but I do identify him, especially in Tomorrow Never Dies, as like a mix of the goofy Q that you saw in Thunderball, all dressed crazy, with the Sheriff Pepper, like, I know you type moments. So it's an interesting amalgamation. I don't know how I should feel about it.
Which version of him do you prefer, the Goldeneye one or the Tomorrow Never Dies one?
Oh, Goldeneye. Tomorrow Never Dies.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think he's like Marcus in the second half of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You know, so
Ah,
Marcus
right,
is a
yeah.
very formidable, smart individual in the first Indiana Jones film. And then by the time you get to the Last Crusade, he's like, hey, could somebody help me?
Yeah.
I
Yeah, he's like full
Alzheimer's.
buffoon kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But I'm okay with it. I'm okay.
Yeah.
I listen. I'm okay with either one because it's an introduction to this gentleman. May he rest in peace, Robbie Coltrane.
Yeah, just bless the
Zukovsky.
guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
just phenomenal. You know, I mean, again, another god tier, just Bond character for me. In terms of allies, he's up there with Keren Bay, Tiger
Yes.
Tanaka.
Yes.
Like he's in that sphere with those greats because and this introductory scene is so good with his line, and I love that the actor said when he read the script, "I would pay you to say that line." Like you don't get that kind of lines where he's identifying Bond's gun, and I think only so many men use it, and I believe I've killed 3 of them or whatever it is exactly. This is another character, just while we're, you know, following on from Wade, another character who will come back in a later Brosnan film. I prefer him in The World Is Not Enough. I think just even his look, like with the goatee and the mustache kind of thing. Here though, he is still brilliant. I guess I like that he has more to do in The World Is Not Enough. He's in more scenes there because whenever I come out of Goldeneye, I just want more of him. He's just phenomenal, brilliant. Anyway, do you like him?
I mean, I like how you said almost like God tier. He
Yeah.
is. He is probably, I'm going to say something really sharp. He's probably in the top 5 characters outside of Bond in the entire franchise.
Wow,
Because every scene and every moment, there's this one thing that I recall to a lot of people is, you know, when he's bragging about his helicopters and, you know, Brosnan's, you know, Bond says, you know, blank. And by the way, you know, none of them work. And there's this little moment, if you just look, he doesn't say a thing, but when his character goes like, yeah, you got me. Like, it's almost like this little tiny multi-second thing that makes the character so rich. It's a fun character, but when he's like shooting between his crotch and things like that, he's dangerous. So he still seems like mob boss, warlord, crime boss type guy, but you're also having fun.
Hmm.
And I don't mean to like slash 45 minutes in and put a flag on the ground, but my best Bond movies and best Bond moments are about having fun. Even with a dangerous bad guy, they've proven time and time again since 1962, you can still have fun. And this character proves it out.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it's a marvel of casting again. I think this film is perfectly cast across the board, just in terms of the looks of the character, like the faces and the attitudes. And Robbie Coltrane is just one of those actors who he can have like nothing to do on the page, and he will still make a character out of it. He's just one of those actors who's just a delight to see in anything. He might be in bad movies. He's never given a bad performance. He's in that category of actor, I think.
I like that. I like that. And it's so sad that he's gone, but never forgotten now, especially because of this movie. But ladies and gentlemen, we have a little surprise for Calvin. We were able to get an actual shot when Calvin, I don't know if everybody knows this, Calvin was at a spa, and he actually got to swim in the same waters and be in a spa with Pierce Brosnan. So we're going to show an image of Calvin and Pierce Brosnan in that spa. It did get heated. It did, but Calvin has no regrets. That's a good picture of you.
Yeah, no, that's great, isn't it? It took a turn when he threw me onto the hot coals in the corner of the room. But
And I heard you didn't take no for an answer, which is in this case appropriate.
Yeah, yeah, no, he wasn't keen on the foreplay. So,
But we got to talk about this scene because, again, having fun, showing her formidable nature, but you're also showing Bond in luxury moments. This spa moment. I mean, how many times have you or others seen this moment where you have a whole pool and spa to yourself, and you're thinking to yourself, like, I'm back in that Goldeneye moment?
oh yeah, no, totally. I completely think of that. Even when he's just like lying on his back, just like floating in the water with his eyes
Yes.
closed. That's something that I think of just randomly. This must be one of those Bond fan curse things, so you just can't get images out of your mind. But literally every time I do that in a pool when there's no one else around, I go back to this scene. But no, that's quite interesting actually, because I've never really thought of it from the lifestyle aspect of the character as well. But yeah, the fact that we are just seeing him in a spa, this is something that Fleming's Bond would do, just go to the spa and he's just recuperating, and then obviously Xenia comes in and we get a fight sequence. But it's a really nice scene, a really nice moment. I like it a lot.
It is. And I don't think it's a secret, but maybe to most people, that waffle weave robe that you see, I bought that for my wife. That's her robe that she uses.
Oh, that's so cool.
Don't think, and she doesn't watch these, and I'll speak slower and softer and closer to the mic. I don't think she knows that I bought it because it's Xenia's, but it is in her closet, and she mostly wears that robe. So,
do you have to like skip through this scene when you're watching it and she like passes in the background just so that she doesn't put two and two together?
You're adorable that you think that Danielle watches Bond movies with me. That's just adorable. That does not happen. But I do like the fact that in this particular case, they could literally just have him find her, and she brings him to Alec or makes the introduction. But instead, they have this fun scene that leads up to, and again, it's this storytelling that takes you for a ride. You see Alec, you think, oh, he's got the drop on him, boom, the dart, and then you've got this wonderful cliffhanger. I mean, this is like the old-fashioned, like tied to the rope of a railroad track, except it's Bond. What did you think?
Yeah, no, that's true. I love this still that you've got as well. Brosnan's face there. That's kind of like in the transition to the pain face. It's the Brosnan pain face.
By the way, what is the, for those that don't always watch this, what is the Brosnan pain face exactly?
Should we do our own versions of it? Because I think you see it mostly in The World Is Not Enough, where he's in the chair at the end. It's like you have to stick out the bottom, very very toothy, very like jaw out kind of thing.
And there's a little bit of like gyration, isn't there? Like
oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
All right, let's get out of that mode.
I love the scene. Natalya, I think, makes it for me. Because she's so screaming and kicking, and she's even when he's helping her out of the thing after it blows up and she kicks him in his shin and runs off, I think she's really an awful lot of fun in this moment. And
I love it's great. A sloppy, I'm going to say something very strange, but you'll get it. It's a sloppy save. Like Brosnan doesn't do anything with a gadget or anything like, darling, just relax. He's like he's smashing his head against the button.
Yeah, no, exactly. He even has a line. I can't remember exactly what it is. I think he might say he makes a wisecrack, and she doesn't respond to it, and he's like, "Oh, whatever," kind of thing. I think he says, "I'm a bit tied up at the moment." She's like, "What?" Yeah. Oh, never mind.
But and yet all that again, the series, the writers could have been like, "Oh, okay, that got him out of that." But it actually doesn't. I mean, they get into like one bad thing after another, which is, again, this whole thing of like the audience members being like, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted, but take me for the ride. Yeah. I love the whole tete-a-tete of like chit chat and, the art of interrogation and things. But then you've got these, I've got to throw this out to you because again, you played the video game and I keep bringing it back to that. Brosnan does action so well. But talk to me about the action that Brosnan brings and the action of the gameplay. Is it comparable? Is it different?
Well, in these scenes, definitely. Like this whole scene in the archives is, escaping with Natalya. That's very much replicated in the game with these similar weapons, similar sets, and it's yeah. I mean, I think he's absolutely sensational in the film. He's running around with the AK-47 and just looks so cool and at ease with it, but not, you still buy into the tension of the situation. It's just really nicely done. And even going into the tank bit next as well, that's another thing that's replicated in the game, and it captures the fun of the action so well. I can't help but think of the game whenever I watch these scenes.
And isn't that a great picture? I saw this one and I'm like, her reaction, her face, and his hair because of the explosions like flying up and stuff. I'm like, that's the scene for me.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
And then you said something about a tank.
Just iconic moment. No?
I mean, everything. And I chose this because this to me is so Brosnan. I know he does this in The World Is Not Enough when he's under the water, the whole straightening of the tie. I mean, Craig has his cuff thing, like he does his cuffs for his action pieces. Brosnan always did his tie. So everybody's got kind of a signature move, but you see the Omega Bond watch there. I'm not wearing the correct one, unfortunately, but
Nice.
still an Omega watch. That's like the introduction of your favorite watch, probably. Is that your favorite watch in the series?
From the gadget aspect, yes. I mean, a watch with a laser is just and again from the game as well, because you had that in the game and you could use it, and that was such a fun weapon to use. Even when you used it on the bad guys or whatever, you could just kill goons with it. It's brilliant.
I love it, and to me, this is like a centerpiece action, but I'm going to bring it back to the soundtrack. I know, and we're in kind of the year of celebrating the sound of 007. This soundtrack is not Eric Serra's. It's a different individual that was brought in to really bring the Bond sound. This particular part of the soundtrack, I can listen to all day long, especially when they get into kind of the Russian themes of James Bond, like dun, 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 dun. That was even before Hans Zimmer did it.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's like you can hear I think it's on the soundtrack, what Eric Serra did compose for that moment. I'm sure that someone's put it together on YouTube where you can hear it with the original score music, and it just doesn't have the same. I don't know, there's something hearing the Bond theme blaring when he comes through, crashing through the wall in the tank. It's just such like a, oh yeah, moment. And that whole sequence, and I believe it was done quite last minute as well, because I think they knew that they needed something more special for that moment. So the composer, who was like, name I can't remember now, did that one piece of music, but they had to really work quickly to get it in there. And thank goodness they did, because I think it's just brilliant.
By the way, you're saying something that we really haven't covered, which this film has so many, whereas some of the newer ones may not, of like fist pumping joyous moments. Like you're just like rooting for Bond, you're rooting for the situation. Amidst all that, again, Bond, this is the movie where Bond finds himself in a pickle more than maybe any other movie. Here we go. We've got he's got in the tank, he's got this situation. I love how they brought all four of them together and the conversation, etc. But even the tete-a-tete once the train crashes into the tank and the conversations back and forth, to me, are gold. What do you think about them?
Oh, yeah, love it. Like when Bond's on and he's talking to Alec and Xenia, it's again, I love Orumov as a bit of a wild card in these scenes because he's so drunk and you don't quite know what he's gonna do. And sure enough, he realizes at some point that what is it? The Bond says, "Oh, he's a Lien's Cossack," and Orumov is realizing something about Alec that he didn't know previously, so that just has this extra element of mistrust in there as well. It's so much fun. I love it. And again, going back to the game, I loved the whole train level on the game as well. It was certainly much more expanded than what you see in the film, but you get to play that moment where Orumov is Natalya at gunpoint behind Xenia and Alec, and you have to shoot him, and just really, really good.
Calvin, this film gets a little dig, not huge, but little digs from people on certain parts that to them feel like they don't quite belong in this movie. I'd like to talk about that because I do think a few of the things that this movie does is it gives you one or two, not a lot, one or two little exhale moments, like
Mm.
quiet little moments where you can kind of just take in and just not be in the action orientation, but kind of just focus on the characters. But for some reason, this scene gets a little bit of hate from people,
Mm.
whether it's her bikini walk up to just the whole connection, like, why is it even here? But what do you think about it? Necessary, unnecessary?
I really like it, and I heard Brosnan talk about this scene I think it was on the audio commentary for Die Another Day actually, where he talked about how he was really attached to this scene when he first read the script, and it is a bit one of the more kind of human, moments. A moment, for an actor, they're going to get quite excited because it is a bit more emotional and
Yeah.
more human. Talking about what keeps him alive and all that kind of stuff. I really like it. I probably didn't like it so much when I was a kid just because it wasn't
Like,
as
hurry up, hurry up.
exciting or yeah, exactly. Now I really like it and I think it is a lovely little I think Natalia's really great in it. She's really kind of feisty.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it? Or how has your
I
opinion changed on it over time?
It's funny. I like the part of this in the game better where he has to unhook her bikini top. That's the cool. That part in the game I remember. No, that's not in the game, ladies and gentlemen. I've liked it. I think I like it more now as a 54-year-old because again, you have this luxury moment where I go back to what Fleming said that there are some luxurious moments if you allow them to seep into your life, even in a secret agent's life. And here you've got this beautiful woman, you've got a beautiful beach, caressing. I mean, you just came from California, you know how this is. You've got these wonderful moments that if you really are present and in the moment itself and not thinking about, oh shit, we're going to a big satellite dish, or
Mm,
oh shit, I just came from a tank chase, you can just drink it in.
mm.
And again, as I get older, I'm appreciating those moments more.
Yeah, yeah.
Ooh, that was philosophical.
Yeah, no, that was
Oh,
good. Yeah.
I can't recover from that. So, wow, I just jumped right to it, didn't you, David? Boom. It's like all of a sudden, hurry up, end this damn video. No. Well, I wanted to do this because we have been showing so much love for this character.
Mm,
We have to talk about henchmen have their endings. They
mm.
always do. That's the one constant of Bond. What did you think about this particular ending for you? Appropriate, a little too campy? Where do
Oh,
you
I
fall?
I kind of love it. It's got that. It's always wonderful when the villain is kind of hoisted by their own petard, kind of thing, and because then
Ooh,
you uses asphyxiation so much. I kind of love that she is kind of suffocated by. That she's on the hook from the helicopter, which is crashing behind her, or maybe her back is snapping. I'm not quite sure. It's one of those kind of vague moments,
yeah.
but I do quite like it. I guess in the grand scheme of the climax, it feels like she's taken care of a little bit sooner just to get her out of the picture for the bigger climax in the base and everything.
Yeah.
But I like that she has her own little moment here. How do you feel about it?
I remember so vividly seeing this in the theater.
Oh,
And
really?
I remember, oh, yes, I remember this part because this had applause from an American audience that doesn't typically applaud
Oh,
in a
wow.
Bond movie. And I tell you what it was. It was the fact that, when he's kind of looking up at the sky and they're all kind of befuddled from crashing and stuff like
Mm,
that. And you just see the helicopter, the boop, 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 boop. And then it's like, boom, you see this person, this henchwoman that is so formidable and so capable, and what she's doing to him, and then the boom, wait your turn. You're like, oh my gosh, this is Bond's in jeopardy. Like
mm,
this woman is doing one-upsmanship, and then all of a sudden to do this very smart thing that he does, with the attachment and the helicopter and stuff. That is the genius of Bond when you have like a really cool moment. I remember in Tomorrow Never Dies watching again a helicopter scene where he takes the rope with Wei Lin and he throws it into the back propeller and then it just like those type of moments. You're like, yeah, I remember sitting there and I wasn't the first to do it, but I remember people around me when she's like going like this, like, and they're
Oh
like,
yeah.
because the film does such a great job in loving her and hating her at the same time.
Yeah.
You want satisfaction. You don't want to leave that theater without knowing she doesn't exist in this world. And
Yeah.
what a way to go out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
satisfying.
No, exactly. She's one of the. I mean, that's just what you want from a villain, isn't it? You want them to be fun, and you want to enjoy watching them do their awful things, but then you still want to have that cathartic feel for them when they get their just desserts.
Yeah. And speaking of that, most good Bond films, at least the classic ones, have dessert, the ending of the film or towards the end of the film, in a villain's lair. It's part of the tropes. I want to talk about how satisfying, because here we are in the villain's lair, happens to be the base of the satellite dish. What did you think about this moment?
Love it again. They're just the whole thing. Again, going back to the game, this is an environment that is very nicely replicated in the game, and you go and you know, at one point you have an option to kill Boris, and if you do, Natalya refuses to complete the level for you because she doesn't like it when you kill
Oh,
Boris. And I know it's really,
really?
yeah, it's really surprising because you have to let him escape basically. Because if you don't, Natalya will come out and say, "Oh no, I'm not gonna fix the satellites now." Actually, I know, weird. But no, I love this whole thing. Like Brosnan, I know this moment gets talked about a lot, but there's a wonderful moment where he's setting the charges on the mines, and there's a spark behind him, and he just like
Yes.
does that with his head. He's just so damn cool. He's just so.
Didn't they
And
show that in one of the trailers? I just remember seeing that, like maybe from the get-go. I know you do
yeah,
so much trailer analysis on your YouTube channel.
I think that they did. Yeah, I can't remember which one exactly, but it is such a it's such a badass shot. And this whole thing with the pen twiddling and the clicks, and
Yes.
there's so many different layers, so many different things going on in that whole sequence. I think it's an awful lot of fun.
Yeah, and one of the things I've noticed about this movie too is that they don't always have technology and gunplay. I mean, yes, there's a lot of gunplay, but the fisticuff moments between Alec and Bond feel very satisfactory, if I can use that word. There's so much satisfaction that they're not just men shooting at each other like in so many other films. Look at No Time to Die. Bang, bang, bang. He's dead. No satisfaction. But there's rawness to their fight, and then ultimately rawness to his ending, which again,
Another
love
great
this
image.
film. Oh
Yeah.
my God, love this. But I mean, in this, we talked a lot in the last hour about introductions of character. I think the exit of these bad guys is almost as important. We just talked about Xenia's exit. We're talking about Alec's exit. When you saw this as young Calvin, and the guy gets dropped and he's still not dead, and then you have to have a satellite dish fall on the guy to kill him. Do you remember that moment?
Yeah, because I do remember I do remember feeling like, oh well, this is kind of brutal. The fact that he survived it, and then because I mean, when you watch enough Disney films, you see like how many of those villains just fall to their deaths, but you never actually see them hit
Yeah.
the ground or anything. And the fact that this one does show you that impact, and his leg
Yeah.
kind of, I think whatever the dummy is or whatever is really good and impressive. But then the fact that he survives that and then the thing comes crashing down on him, oh, it's really cathartic, and I love it for that.
It's absolutely amazing. I love it as well. And well, there's also the dispatch of, and I love this part because again, a lot of these things they didn't even need to show. But
Yeah.
somebody in the writer's room said, all right, we've introduced all these baddies. We really despise them. The audience is against them appropriately. Bond has gone against them. We got to dispatch them, but let's not just do them in a meh sort of way, which I think, again, some Bond films are just like, okay, at this point, just get rid of him. Bunch of smoke, an explosion, etc. This is genius.
Yeah.
I mean, what did you think?
This is one of the best like comeuppances of Bond. The fact that he has his catchphrase, and then it's a funny gag. It's really nice, and I think you might know this more than me. I think this is a model, right? And
It is.
Isn't it in a
It's
Planet
coming.
Hollywood somewhere? Or
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it is. But it's a mannequin, dummy, whatever you want to call it. It's
Yeah.
genius. I wouldn't mind that in my collection.
I was going to say, this is something that if it ever comes up on auction, I could totally see you getting this for the collection. It's, yeah.
You're not going to believe this. So this is how you and I roll, but you and I are huge fans of The World Is Not Enough. The one piece in the Christie's auction wasn't the cars for me, or believe it or not, even the Tom Ford suits. I loved M's clock and the card, the locator card from The
Yeah.
World Is Not Enough. That's what I would have wanted.
Yeah. Did you bid on it? Did you get
No,
it?
I didn't bid on anything. I very consciously didn't, because I'm like, you have enough toys, David. Let somebody else get some toys. Let him get some enough toys.
That's very fair of you.
It's all right. Every now and then, have a moment. Speaking of moments, I loved something at the end of this film that to me is very traditional in some of my favorite films, including the Roger Moore ones. And that is, you have this fun little moment at the end with Bond and the Bond girl. It's so Bond, like more than any other movie genre. I think it's very Bond moment. But did you recognize it? I mean, I know over time, I'm sure you have, if you watch the movies, of like, oh, Roger Moore's with a girl and Sean Connery's with a girl. And I mean, have you kind of recognized that over time?
Oh yeah, definitely. And even then, I think Goldeneye is in a it's slightly different to the other ones. So many of them end up with Bond and the girl in bed together, or just about to go to bed, or in some kind of private scenario.
Yeah.
Here, it's kind of a joke, like, you know, when all the Marines come up and they've been watching them the whole time while they've been making out in the grass, which is funny. But then how they go away together, Bond picks her up and they're kind of joking together, and she's like, "Oh, no planes," or whatever, and it's cuter, I think, maybe than it goes for cute and humor rather than sexiness. I think I kind of like it for that in a way. I don't know about like Bond says baby, like he refers to her as like I think he says there's nothing else around in 24 miles, baby, or am I mishearing it? I think he calls her
maybe
babe
not.
or
Baby. Oh, I have to listen to that again.
Suppose someone is worth seeing.
There's no more than 25 miles, believe me.
Yo, Jimbo!
I don't know if it's just Brosnan saying something that I should have put the subtitles on for that moment, really.
All right, we'll figure it out. We'll put it in here or not in here, and we'll listen. If it did, you're blowing my mind, because I don't think I've ever heard Bond say baby.
Yeah, right.
Except in a title song where it's like, "Baby, you're the best."
Right? Yeah. No, it's just when he's on top of her and she's on top of him, and yeah, I think the line is like, there's no one around for 24 miles, baby," or something.
I don't know
like
if I like that. That doesn't sound like Brosnan or Bond.
It's a weird thing, for him to be saying. But yeah,
I could see Brosnan in Malibu, like someone delivering like some food to him as he's doing a live stream on Goldeneye and going, "Oh, thanks, baby."
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those things that I've definitely probably misheard, and the comments are just going to be full of people correcting me for what it actually is. Yeah,
Calvin, you don't know anything. You don't like Thunderball, you son of a bitch. Like, we know where they're coming from. All right, listen, here's how we're going to end this thing, because I'm going to ask for your help. I know we did a little bit of, couch diving in the philosophical sense of your upbringing, your love for the video games connection, but I need your help with something. And maybe you can help answer a question that I actually cannot. This is real. We just went through an hour and 5 minutes of absolute adoration. Clearly, folks, this was not a debate. We liked certain aspects more than others, and different approaches to the characters, to what they did, to the connections to the games. We unraveled a lot. Why doesn't David Zaritsky choose Goldeneye to watch more? Because I don't. For some reason, when I go to watch a Brosnan film, I will watch The World Is Not Enough, certainly Tomorrow Never Dies. A third is I go to Goldeneye, and then if I hate myself, die another day. No, I just, but for some reason, and by the way, that goes for all the other films. This is such a great film. Certainly, it makes it into my top echelon, and I just don't find myself going to it. Why is that?
I think I don't know how to quantify it exactly. I don't know if it's to compare it to something, food maybe. There's something to do with richness, because I am similar to you in the sense that my go-to Bonds, if I'm just like in a mood for whatever, just stick one on. It's a Sunday afternoon and I'm not feeling great. It's just comfort food, whatever. I will go to Octopussy and Tomorrow Never Dies. Even though neither of those are my favorites, neither are in my top 5 perhaps, but sometimes you have to be in the right kind of mood or setting for something. Like, this is a gourmet experience for me, and sometimes I might just want something a bit more fast food and a bit more kind of easy to take in. I put this in the same category as like Casino Royale, for instance. Actually, like, I can't just stick that one on. I have to be in the right mindset for it. But when I am, it's like it's an unparalleled experience. But still, it's a mindset thing.
No, you're absolutely right. Because as you were talking, I'm thinking about, I don't typically go to Goldfinger, and I don't typically go to Casino Royale, and I don't typically go to Goldeneye. And I'm just wondering, are those 3 films, and I just took those out of the blue, there's others like From Russia with Love that I won't gravitate to because they're almost like, it's like staring into the sun. It's like, it's almost like too perfect. We said something in the middle of this video, like Fleming, we relish and embrace imperfection. And so Quantum of Solace, Tomorrow Never Dies, Octopussies, that people may not gravitate to, it's almost like I've got to pay more attention to my child that has a hobbled leg than the one that's an athlete and has an all-star review at a college. It's like, I don't know, it's like all of that, but you're right, it's the richness of it.
I think so. It's something that I've heard from other Bond fans as well, where your favorite one might not necessarily be the one that you've seen the most. And I can stick Tomorrow Never Dies, Octopussy on any time of the day. I can really enjoy it. Whereas Goldeneye is more of like I want to have a nice glass of wine, some chocolates maybe on a nice evening at night time, just where I can just dedicate my whole attention to it or whatever.
I love that. And Goldeneye takes, whether it's Goldeneye or Casino Royale, to me, that's like it's Wednesday, and I'm thinking Saturday evening I'm going to watch Goldeneye, or Saturday evening Danielle and I are going to watch Casino Royale. It's a planned event, as opposed to Tomorrow Never Dies. It's like, oh my gosh, Danielle's in the shower for like the next 25 minutes. Let me put on Tomorrow Never Dies, the helicopter scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Thank you. Seriously, thank you. Because I wrestled with this. I'm like, I'm going to talk to Calvin at like freaking 8 a.m, and I don't know why I don't watch this movie more. I love it.
No. I'm kind of the same. Like, this is probably my favorite Bond film, and there are others that I've seen more, even though I might not value them as much. It's a weird thing. I don't know. Maybe people can let us know in the comments if they have similar
they will. They will.
issues.
Calvin, look, it's probably such a simple thing to say that everybody can see you on your YouTube channel. Your YouTube channel has exploded. People love it. It's relevant. It's fun. But you've been doing something that kind of connects back to this video of a retrospect and Brosnan appreciation moments. What can we expect from you moving forward?
Oh, a lot more Brosnan love, to be honest. The next in-depth review that I'm going to be doing is actually Goldeneye, so that'll be coming up before the end of the year, and then I'm going to be doing a big video on Nightfire, because that game has turned 20 years old this year, if you want to feel really old. Those are kind of the big ones coming up, but I'm just fully on the Brosnan love train at the moment. I've rewatched those films, some of them recently in the cinemas when they were out here for the 60th anniversary, so that kind of really sparked a re-interest, I guess. So I'm going to be doing some deep diving. I even like Dine of the Day a lot more than I thought I did. I know.
Had me up until the last 30 seconds, and then I can edit that out.
If you ever have the opportunity to see that film on the big screen again, I highly recommend it. It's I
would watch it if I had the time.
Seriously, if it happens, I think it's one that you need to see.
I could learn to like it if I had the time. No. Calvin, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure as always. And look forward to the next time.
Oh, there will be a next time. Mwah, mwah. And this has been David Zaritsky for the Bond Experience, and we'll see you all real soon. Take care.
See ya.
Thanks for watching this episode. If you want to be up on the latest from the Bond experience, just click on this subscribe and subscribe to our channel. You're going to get all the latest and greatest information, plus some exclusive content. And by the way, speaking of content, here's something especially for you, just because we know you. Talk to you soon.